Hello everybody, John here, and today onto the garage we're looking at how the ride height is settling on my suspension modified Jaguar XK8. Well, I said I'd keep you abreast of developments on ride height and the centering of the dampers since I replaced the shock mounts, seat cushions or isolators and damper top mounts on the front with the aftermarket upgraded ones, and look at how that's staying central. And also, once I'd done some reasonable miles in the car, I'd update the new ride height and we could compare it with standard and how I had it with the British parts shock mount and damper isolators in. Will make sense in a moment. I know what I'm on about. So let's get into it, because the weather is not looking like it's going to stay decent for long. So if I pop the bonnet, just come back from a bit of a drive. I've left my jazzy damper tops off for now, just so that we can see what's going on. Now again, I'm going to apologise because I was looking at the screen on the back of this camera just now and gave myself a heart attack, and now I'm looking at it for real. And so this is a wide angle camera, and depending where I move it, and if I just lean it a little bit, it gives some pretty big distortions. So I'm trying to hold it directly above the centre of the damper, but I can tell you by eye, as in real eye, my eye, that is bang on centre. And it's, the bolt is in the middle of the metal, which we would expect, and the bolt is in the middle of the rubber, let's call it for ease, and the rubber is concentric, to use the appropriate term, to the metal of its mount. So that is stayed bob on centre. Over at the other side, is it better or worse as you're closer? No, I don't know. It's in the middle again, guys. That's the summary. I think it's not quite so distorted if I come away. So again, not in the middle of the rubber, concentric to the shell of the shock mount. All good. Just while I'm under here, I've left the tops off my headlights for the last month. I took them off for a particular reason, which I can't remember. Dried out the bags that were in them. I got a little bit of moisture in them. I got desiccant bags in mine. In doing so, I broke one of the clips on the tops, and so they are underneath all these cushions off our garden furniture. Oh no, they're not, they're over here. Broke one of these clips, so I didn't put them straight back. What's been interesting is I have driven it a fair amount and in a mixture of weather, and there is no condensation. Don't get me wrong, my headlights do look lovely anyway, because I did replace them with new units, so the bright work is very bright. But yeah, it's given me thoughts about, do I do a little mod for the future? Taking a little bit of inspiration from you, John Palmer, as well. This is the broken one. I might get hold of a new pair of these if they're not stupidly expensive. And if I do get hold of a new pair, I think what I will do with the old pair is cut a slot, quite a big slot, so maybe 8mm wide, route it out here on the high part of the headlight, and then plastic weld on a scoop that faces backwards towards the engine and slightly up, and put a bottom edge on it so that if any water did run down, it wouldn't go in, and just allow heat from the headlight and heat from the engine bay to lift moisture, just as a really interesting experiment to see how it goes, because maybe these things are locking in the moisture. Heat rises, condensation rises, and you've got a cup, and stuff's going to condense and come back down, and the vents on the headlights are actually on the bottom surface. So yeah, just carrying on the condensation in the headlights idea. So yeah, I'd have a scoop sort of facing maybe back in here. I'd just make sure that there's no way it could be splashed with water while either washing it, jet washing it, or driving it, and then do an experiment, see how we get on. Anyway, back to the wheels. So the car is still looking beautifully stanced. It's got a very subtle lowered look. It's not extreme. If you're not very familiar with XK8s, you certainly wouldn't spot it. If you were familiar with XK8s, you might not spot it. I can, just because I spend too much time staring at XK8s. But we're going to measure it now and see what we're actually at. I've got plenty of videos on ride height and how to measure it and all the rest, but the right way to measure ride height very quickly is from the centre of your wheel to the underside of your wheel arch or fender if you're in the States. That's because pressure in your tyres, size of your tyres, unevenness of the ground has no effect on it. And you should also try and average across the two wheels, because unless you're stood on a billiard table, there might be a little bit of articulation in there. So let's have a quick look, see where we come at. So the only bit of guesswork here is just the centre of my cat badge. Oops. So in fairness, I am guessing the middle of the centre cap, but that's not too difficult. 378. I'm just going to go around the other side and shout at you. Oh, there's no need to shout, I've got the microphone. 388. So 378 on this side, 388 on the other side. That'll be because the ground's not flat. Split the difference, that's 383. Let me get my little notebook. Okay, so we're at 383 ride height on the front. Jaguar's spec is 400. When I fitted the British parts, spring isolators and shock mounts, we ended up with 372. Now, having replaced those with the upgraded mounts, as I say, we're at 383. So we've gained back about 1 centimetre. So the drop over original spec is now maybe a fraction over 20 millimetres. Whereas with those really spongy mounts, it was nearly 30 millimetres. And of course that was going to get lower and lower. What I didn't do was measure the ride height just before I changed them. Those ride heights were measured after a quick bedding in drive. Maybe I'd done 100 miles, I think. By the time I'd swapped them, I think they probably collapsed another 5 to 10 mil. Now what I can check is the rears, because standard on the rear is 410. That's a brand new Jaguar with unmodified springs. When I changed the springs to lowered springs on the back, I also changed the shock mounts and spring seats, again for British parts ones, and I measured it again after a quick settling down session. and it came out at 380. What's interesting now is they have not been changed or upgraded, so I can see if they've moved some more. So after installation and driving 100 miles, they were at 380. And I'm going to see if I can bring the camera up so you can see. Interesting, these are still at 380, near as makes no difference. I will check the other side though. Now it is a different setup on the back, and I think it's probably less affected and less abused by the shock mounts 385, excuse me. So again, allowing for error in the way I'm measuring it, ground effects, etc. 385, I would say they are where I left them. So they're not collapsing as such, but they're completely protected from the elements, whereas the fronts aren't. The spring isolators at the back might get a little bit splashed with water, but they're quite a way up and tucked away. They certainly won't see a lot of heat. They will see no light. Whereas the front ones do see quite a lot of heat, do see a little bit of light, not an awful lot. And despite having wheel arch liners, they see a lot of water. Now, I'm going to show you something I'm finding very interesting. When I disassembled the originals, and I say originals, original to me, shock mounts, spring isolators, etc. I took all the rubbers out, and they are obviously, very obviously, the same material. And it's this open cell polyurethane, I would guess, foam. It's a lot firmer than the British parts supplied stuff, but it's this colour, and you can actually see there's a lighting's not brilliant in here. There we go. There's a lighter part. That's where it's been in contact with metal and covered up. And there's a darker part. You see sort of a redder shade where it's seen a little bit of daylight, a little bit of weather. And all of the foam rubber components I took out looked exactly the same in terms of colours. Now, on purpose, don't look it, but trust me, on purpose, I left these two, these are spring mounts, outside. And you can see how they've been sat, I've not moved them. And they've been out here a month for, well, probably, it's going to be Christmas time. These have been out in the weather. Now on this side, still got quite a lot of the orange shade to them. On this side, they've gone dark red to black and have cracked much more than they were when I took them off. Look at this. Materials degrading in the elements massively. There's another one. Not touch it, genuinely. Look. This side is brittle almost. This side still reasonably compliant. I'm going to put them back exactly as I found them. Just continue the experiment, because look at the difference. Even compared to that side, which I said is darker because it's seen a little bit of element. So I think on our original components that come off the cars, they degrade mainly because of UV and moisture and possibly heat. I'm in Lincolnshire, they've not seen any heat, but it's probably another factor. Environmental factors is what causes them to break down, which you'd expect with rubbers and foams and polyurethanes. This is the toffee, as I'm calling it, that we took out. I mean, it's so much softer and more spongy than this material, but it doesn't bear comparison. I'm squeezing that as hard as I can, and I am deforming it, but really locally. This is thinner, and look, I mean, I'm not strong. This is so much softer. I'm going to take one of them and leave that outside. I'm going to see if it degrades in the same way. Maybe it doesn't. This is going to collapse very quickly. But is it going to survive the environmental stuff much better? And I know it's not a fair comparison because condition, but that is that. This is really firm and coming apart. This is floppy nasty. So I'm going to see what happens. How does that fare just left exposed to sunlight and rain? But yeah, I think our originals failed because of environmental conditions, which might say that certain climates these survive better than others. I'll be interested in the guys in Arizona, and we got plenty of subscribers in Arizona and other hot states, including regulars like Gary Mees and Gary Van Remortel. Do we think in your areas, guys, where you're arid, you know, you're dry, but you do suffer with the heat, do you think yours hold up better generally than the sort of stuff you see in here? Or do you think it's the heat that's destroying them? And what we might see as a bit of heat damage due to under bonnet temperatures, you'd be getting all the time because this is getting so hot. Yeah, it'd just be interesting to know. Or if somebody is doing a similar project to me and taking rubbers out of a car, and you're in a hot state or a hot country other than the States, stick one outside for us, leave it for a couple of months, and maybe take a before and after picture. Likewise, it might be nice to get somewhere really humid. I mean, the UK is pretty damp at times, but there are other places in the world that would definitely knock it into a cocked hat in terms of humidity. Yeah, it'd be just interesting to get your views on that. My faux carbon fibre radiator closing panel has just about reached the end of its pretty life. I wrapped it. I'm not a wrapper, and I don't mean like that. So obviously other people would do it better than me, but it looked really quite smart for quite a long time, and I only did it not to pretend it was carbon, because it was a pretty finish, and the original finish is very rough, fibrous. So I'll be redoing this shortly, and I might try a different technique. I may try to put some sort of isolating paint on it and then paint it up body colour, paint it up black. I have considered remaking it in another material, maybe stainless steel or aluminium. Not sure, but yeah, I'm going to re-pretty that area before very long. So if anybody else has got any experience, I'd be interested to know how you've got on and what you've used to decorate that. The material it's made of is the same as the crash member, which I don't know if you can see because bad lighting, but it looks like string sticking out of it. It's a very rough finish. I've had a couple of observant people ask me, how do you get on with parking the car on the ramp, John? You do it on yourself and your drive doesn't seem to come straight at it. You know, is it tricky to get it lined up? I cheat. I've got a truck mirror here on the end of my bench, which see what angle you guys are looking at. When I look for the windscreen of the car, I kind of see that sort of view, and I can watch the wheels driving over the ramp. And I've got a stripe, it's actually some tape on the ramp, which I know if I get the front wheel close to it, it'll come on reasonable. I always end up a little crooked because my drive, I don't know if you can see the sort of angle, is not, yeah, again, distortion, it's very hard to tell. If I show you, parallel with the side of my garage is there we go. So that probably shows off, it comes in at a funny angle. So I always end up a little bit skewy, but it doesn't make any difference. So yeah, I cheat. I look in that mirror at the end and I know exactly where I am. I've got a lot of little jobs to do on the XK8, first of which really must be doing my anti-roll bar drop links, because I do have a tiny bit of noise coming from them. I had an advisory on my MOT saying that my bottom dwell joints were giving a little bit of movement on one side, but I think the drop links are causing more noise than anything else. Plus it's a quicker, easier job. So I'm probably going to do them before I do too much else on here. They're literally in that box down there, so I've got no real excuses other than I've been looking after myself a little bit, just a few little health issues, nothing to concern anybody about, but yeah, I've been doing myself a favour by not overstraining. So I will get to it quite soon, and we've just been away for a few days in Jazzy, really enjoyed ourselves despite the weather. You can see the state of her. But just a quick update for people who watch all of the videos. I did a video a while back on how I blackened everything, the plastics that are faded, using turtle wax, acrylic ceramic, I think it was called, something like that. Anyway, shortly after I'd put it on, I put up a very quick video saying it's failing already. And I was really upset by it because the finish it gave was brilliant. The effort required to put it on, not too bad. The price, very, very good. But the reality is stone chips took chunks of it off. And if you try and overcoat it, it starts to become obvious for it's on the bumper, not in the bumper at all. So if you've got a little stone chipped out bit and you put a little bit of black on top of that, not only will you be chasing it around all the time, but you start to end up with these scabs as if you've painted an old door without stripping it down. You can see what's underneath it. So I'm quite upset about that. I did try to get in touch with Turtle Wax to share my experience. You know, I'm a very polite person. I bought the stuff myself and really wasn't impressed. But I tell you what, it's really hard to find a phone number for those guys. And when I did find their complaints and comments section and left them messages, nobody came back to me. So Turtle Wax, we're done. I have got a new product to do it. And what I've been doing over the last few weeks is jet washing the front of the van really regularly. The jet wash took most of it off in one go, but the 10% remaining, I've been using alcohol and cloths to get it all off, and I just didn't want to leave any of it on there. It's now all off and it looks awful again. But I'm really looking forward to putting on the next substance. You see the tiger striping? That's how the parts moulded and formed and cooled. Quite interesting if you're into plastic injection moulding. You can actually see the materials come in here, I think, flowed both ways, and the tiger striping is cooling before fully set to shape. But yeah, that's just me being a bit of a how they make it geek. So as soon as I can, I'll be out cleaning that and using this one, which again bought myself, nothing to do with sponsorship, don't do it as a rule anyway. Meant to be very good. The negative is it's high gloss, so if you don't like a wet look, you won't like how this is going to turn out. I don't mind a wet look, but it won't look original, so I'm going to try that. Other people have reviewed it and had fantastic things to say. I'm hoping that they're as honest as I am. Right, I'm going in. It's getting cold. The sky has gone ich. And as I said, I'm looking after myself just a little bit. So I'll see you guys again very soon. Bye. If you're enjoying our channel, then don't forget to subscribe and click the little bell icon so you get notifications of new videos. And please give us a thumbs up or thumbs down, and you can share the videos. And below the video is always the area where you can comment and get involved with the chat.